Merrylin Cryptid Museum, Part 4, Homo Vampyrus. The vampire is an offshoot of Australopithecus, much like our shared distant cousin the lycanthrope. Both species are symbiotic hominids, carrying transferable immunodeficiency pathogens, viruses abundant in the blood and saliva that can be transferred to human and non-human hosts, where these unique genetic traits are inserted into the DNA of the infected, taking on the characteristics of each species. Homo vampyrus is a nocturnal hominid with a huge dependency on iron and protein. Francis Gerber, Swiss-born physician, botanist, chemist and naturalist, whose prolific writings focused on the study of the origins of humanity. His own research began around 1776, where he commissioned African poachers to bring him specimens of the great apes, which he dissected in an attempt to construct a detailed inventory of terrestrial and arboreal apes and their aesthetic and anatomical similarities to the Homo sapien. His research garnered a great deal of criticism, yet most of his work was completed in private. One of his many employees would present him with a shipment of species from sub-Saharan Africa, the Amazon and parts of India. Yet it was a bone fragment that piqued Gerber's interest in the lesser-known hominids. On December 14, 1780, Gerber unpacked a collection of specimens from the Far East. Amongst these samples was a partial skull fragment of the upper mandible and part of the brow. The teeth were intact, and clearly very unique. The upper cuspids were distended and serrated and, although in a state of decay, connected to the bone tissue by a complex musculature, which allowed the teeth to protrude and retract from two fissures in the jaw. His hasty communications to the collector he had bought the pieces from pointed to a village on the eastern shore of Lake Baikal, in Mongolia. He traveled to this destination, a destitute collection of huts nestled in the icy inlet of the great body of water. It was here he was introduced to a man, whose daughter had been murdered by what the villagers called a blood thief. He asked for a place to examine the body, which was provided. It was here he made his first examination of what he coined the nocturnal hominid, or Homo vampyrus, a primate whose body appeared augmented by a form of parasitic virus. His studies of the osteology and organs provided ample proof that this body was in fact not human at all. He soon collected a wealth of knowledge, and most importantly revolutionized the study of hemoglobin, through invention of sophisticated microscope apparatus. He was fascinated by the behavior of vampire blood cells and managed to dispel the myth that these creatures only fed on human blood. Around 1836, 50 miles outside Rome, he was confronted with a child that displayed no supernatural affliction, besides heavy wounds to her neck and stomach. Her labored breathing spoke of something far worse than the medieval superstitions that filled the book he held close to him. On the 20th day, he found her dead. He sought out the weapons of defense and began a pilgrimage, to slay the beast who had taken this child's life. But the story did not end here. As he followed the path of death across the villages and towns of Italy, up into northeast Europe, he learned of his quarry. On a fateful night at the apex of his journey, as he spied the vile culprit stalking a sheep, a presence who had followed the cleric for many days made himself known. A tall pale man, dressed in bizarre clothing that was reminiscent of feudal Japan, stood before him. He told Abramo that his name was Dervold, of the house of Demaclef. He was a vampire, who had been sent to find the feral murderer whom Abramo hunted himself. Dervold spoke of his respect for the cleric, and wished him to know of the real culture that hid behind the demon of folklore. The cleric agreed. They traveled for many weeks, only by night, until they reached the Altai Mountains of Mongolia. They reached the zenith of the path, an opening in the mountainside, and within, a seemingly endless cavern. Before them lay a city. It was pale, lifeless yet utterly beautiful, as though constructed from bleached bone and charcoal. The light seemed to hang all around yet fell from no fixed source. Its people were of similar stock, like shadows of humans, drifting like skeleton leaves to and fro. "This is my home, the city of Venus," spoke the vampire. It was here that the cleric Abramo befriended the ancient people of Venus. Built 30,000 years BC, Venus was the stronghold and citadel of the vampire nation. Built in concentric circles, around the central cathedral, Venus was a place of learning for the ancient porcelain-faced hemophage who had lived since the dawn of their race. They possessed the knowledge of thousands of generations. They were carnivorous, dependent on high iron and protein diets, Yet their lust was quenched by production of iron-rich foods, without resorting to blood feeding. He took this knowledge with him back to Italy, where he continued his studies. Along with various other cryptobiologists, they sought out the rarest specimens of flora and fauna, and forged cures, poisons and elixir based on their studies in the annals of Venus, the great libraries of thought. And in return, fed the old ones the information of the modern age.
Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to our channel for more videos.